Breaking news, a deadly carjacking in Woodland Hills.
Tonight, police in Lancaster, Texas have identified a possible suspect who investigators say pointed a gun at a passing car.
Hello, this is Michael Hart, and you are listening to the Heart of America Situational Security edition of the program. Today, we're going to be joined by none other than our good buddy Dan Ross. Dan's going to come talk to us. He is the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy, and he is going to come talk to us about personal protection, possible infractions, if you will, by the federal government on your right to carry, possible new moves towards confiscation of weapons, firearms here in the United States, and a lot of other chatter that is, possibly threatening the security, safety, sanctity of your family and your friends. As everybody that listens to this program for any length of time has known, I am a strong advocate of our Second Amendment rights and our right to protect one another. A couple of weeks ago, we've actually had Kevin Revo on the program a couple different times from On Point Tactical, and he's made the point on each visit that we have to become our own first responders. And that might look like, carrying a firearm. It might look like using a fire extinguisher, or knowing how to change the tire on a car, or even protect ourselves in the event of some kind of cyber threat. That is the purpose of this program, is to keep everybody safe, sound, and secure in almost any conceivable situation. In the next couple of weeks, we're going to be talking a bit about wildlife safety, what to do if you're caught out in the wilderness, what to do if your car breaks down, first aid approaches, et cetera, et cetera. But let me tell you a little bit more about why I wanted to bring Dan back today, because not only am I a strong advocate of the Second Amendment and our rights to carry firearms and to use them proficiently. One of the issues that I have had with the government, and I don't mean the Trump administration, I mean government just as a whole, is the fact that it proves almost every single day its woeful incompetence when it comes to the governance of civilizations. And what I mean by that isn't so much the policy making, but the fact is that we create and we craft laws that are oftentimes too specific to an individual political party's desire to maintain or regain power, as opposed to do what's best for the general population. And there has been no better example of that than the recent discussions over the border wall and the government shutdown. And in the last few days, we have talked about how many politicians, especially on the left, and just so you know, the purpose of the Situational Security edition of this program, as well as the Unknown America editions, the intention is for us not to be hyper-political or partisan, but just to get to the root cause and the root truth. But every once in a while, you just have to call things for what they are. And as many people are aware, as we have discussed the shutdown, there has been a lot of, evidence that previous administrations, as well as Democrats, have been quite supportive of border security until Donald Trump takes office. Now, there's a funny audio and video out there, Jim Acosta making an ass of himself, proving basically that the walls work. And, maybe we'll get into that on Monday's edition of the program. But I do have a little piece of audio that I want to share with you very quickly as we get to Dan, because I think it kind of frames a big part of my concern quite well. And I have decided to make this particular piece of audio a permanent addition, at least semi-permanent anyway, to the program, in addition to the program, and I may very well play it every single time I take a commercial break. Now, when we do the situational security broadcast, there's typically only one interim break in the entire program, so you might only hear it one at a time today. But I think this needs to be drilled into people's heads over and over and over again. And I'm not just making the point here that Democrats in previous years have been supportive of the wall and border security, but the fact that they will waffle back and forth, politically speaking, depending on whatever whim they are on that particular day. And I am convinced that if Donald Trump came out today and said we are going to have a wholesale ban on all firearms, the Democrats would fight it. I believe that with every fiber of my being, that they would be the biggest proponents for our Second Amendment rights to protect ourselves, not only in our vehicles, our churches, our synagogues, and our homes, but to protect ourselves from a sometimes overwhelmingly encroaching federal government, and one that has no character or integrity or identity that is discernible. This particular piece of audio, it only is about 30 seconds long, but I want to play it before I bring Dan on us because I want to demonstrate to you that we cannot trust these people to do the right thing because they themselves do not know what the hell they want. They just go with whatever they perceive to be the popular political fight. In this audio, you're going to hear Dianne Feinstein, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Barbara Boxer, and Chucky Schumer. So check this out. This is why politicians scare me so much. These are, with the exception of Barbara Boxer, the loudest voices against securing the southern border today, but this is just less than a handful of years ago.
Mexico does nothing to enforce its border.
The bill before us will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences.
I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier.
I don't oppose building a fence where you need to do it, where the border is porous. I just don't have a problem with that.
Until the American people are convinced that we will stop future flows of illegal immigration, we will make no progress.
For the time being, enforce our borders.
And this is why I don't trust politicians with border security or the security of my home. And that's why we have joining us today the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy, Dan Walsh, joining us from our sister state in New York. Good morning, my brother. How are you?
Hey, pal. How are you? I'm doing good.
Well, we are delighted to have you with us again. And I know that we're going to talk a bit about we're not talking about border security, but the reason I played that audio, Dan, is because I'm trying to get people to understand that politicians, when it comes to things that are relative to the culture, they can make policy, but they don't really know how to make laws that, they don't make good cultural laws. They're not able to protect us. This is something which is our responsibility, and I think fewer and fewer people are taking it seriously or understand how completely out of their minds they can be. Earlier today, we had the story that the young girl, the 13-year-old Wisconsin girl, Jamie Kloss, that had gone missing after her parents were both murdered in their home. She has been found alive and safe and is now in the hands of the authorities, so that is certainly good news. But we are seeing kind of a growing trend in this country, Dan, of crime, of assaults, of murders, of invasions, and especially when you couple that in with things like derangement syndrome, people seem to be losing their ever-loving mind, and there is no better time or higher need for us to be able to protect ourselves, despite the fact that the government doesn't seem to want to contribute to that or in some ways even impede it.
Let me try to answer that by saying Democrats just want to win the popularity contest, and that's why you hear them say that Hillary won the popular vote. It's all about popularity, which means numbers. The more people that vote Democrat, the better for them, because then they'll have control. And the way they do that is they try to group the minority groups together. They try to rally all the minority groups because they know that if they do that, they can outwin the white voters. And so the big thing that they're trying to do is just rally the groups of people they think they can get to win the vote, and they do it through fear and hate. And it's very similar to what they do in the gun debate, where they try to make people fearful of guns and hateful toward gun owners. In the broad scope of the political battle, they do the same thing. They make people scared of either being called racist or scared of these so-called Nazi Republicans. And so fear is a big component, and then they also develop in hate against Trump supporters. And all this. The idea is to rally as many of the groups together over on their side, use those strategies, get the votes, and control the government.
Do you find it even remotely surprising, considering all the discussions that we have had about border security and security in our homes, the Democrats in particular, and I know Republicans do it as well, to be nonpartisan here, but there seems to be so much waffling back and forth that I don't know how anybody in their collective right mind could trust politics to offer any measure of safety and or security. And when you start to factor in things like the possibility of gun confiscation in sanctuary cities and open borders, there seems to be this trend in this country to just, back in the 60s, it was, open love and free sex. Now it almost seems like they've replaced the word sex with violence and or assault.
Yeah, I think it's like, I talk about the popular table a lot, and everybody remembers the popular table in school. Now, I don't know about you, but I never was invited to sit at it, but I saw it from afar, and I noticed that what happened at the popular table was the menu could change, but it was always the menu that was dictated by whoever was at the popular. In other words, whatever was in at the time, you better be on board with, because if not, you'll get kicked out of the popular table. This is junior high school all over again in adulthood, because they understand that some people
Doesn't it feel that way? I mean, no, you're absolutely right. It feels very much that way.
It is, because they know that even as adults, there are weak-minded people who can't stand on their own that will always gravitate toward the popular group, because when you get to the popular group, you have security and you have strength in numbers. It's all about the popular table.
Okay, let's stop there, because there has been meme after meme after meme, particularly in recent weeks, pictures of Pelosi's home, Obama's home, Schumer's home, etc., and they all have big fences or walls around them. We know that there are a lot of people that are very anti-gun. They are anti-Second Amendment, yet they employ armed bodyguards. These stories are so commonplace that they are almost satirical. Isn't it interesting that there seems to be this two-faced approach to safety and security from our elected officials who employ armed guards as well as walls, but we are not, as the middle class or the great unwashed, or we'll just use your analogy, not at the popular table, are not allowed to be afforded these same safeties and securities. Now, of course, we are free to carry weapons in this country in most states of America, but that particular right is and has been under attack for the longest period of time. And I think that's very demonstrative of the fact that they don't really care that much about our safety and security, which is why we need to have people like you out there spreading the constitutional right. And we're not going to discuss so much how to use your weapon today, but, Dan, we've got to really enforce with people that politicians in particular, they do not have our best interest at heart. They have no problem with us dying in the streets if we can still vote for them. And I know that sounds harsh, but the evidence to support that claim builds almost every single day. And you and I were talking a day or two ago, and you had made a comment to me about some possible new discussions on what was looming on the horizon as it relates to to bump stocks and ammunition and sales and distribution. They just keep coming at it. But as long as they have their walls and their guards, they're fine. But they don't seem to want to afford us the same consideration.
No, you're right, because they understand how important it is to have guns to not only protect yourself, but to protect your family and the good people around you. They understand that. They're not stupid. These Democrat gun grabbers are not stupid people. They're actually very strategic. So what they'll do is they'll try to restrict the general population as much as possible, but I honestly don't think that they want the Second Amendment to go away. They just want to get it under control where they can decide who the Second Amendment applies to, because that way they'll have control of society, and the people that they've already been working on for decades with their fear campaign, their anti-gun fear campaign, those people are very malleable. They will go whichever way the Democrats want them to go, and it's easy to do. All they have to do is use a few specific tactics, like I said, fear and hate. They can redirect that fear and hate among their followers, and they can get them to either support something or not support it, go against it. So they've got their voters, the weak people who don't critically think this topic through, and they're going to have guns, and they want to gain as much control over that Second Amendment, because that Second Amendment is the people who believe in the Constitution, the people who support the Constitution, who carry guns, who have guns. That's their real opposition. It's not ISIS. It's not terrorists. It's not gang MS-13. It's not any of those bad guys. The real bad guys to the Democrats are the traditional Americans.
Why do you think that is? Is it just a matter of not being able to get them, to vote for them or to vote in the way that they want them to? I know that in a lot of these countries where these illegal immigrants, or as I've sort of called them, illegal voters, are coming from, are countries where there are widespread bans on gun ownership. So you're not only importing new voters, but you are importing a class of people, or allowing a class of people to enter this nation that also do not have a predisposition to want to carry a firearm. Now, that's a very broad archetypical statement, but nonetheless, it does hold some truth. So I'm just kind of curious because, it seems like every single day that the conversation continues, and I understand that there has been violence perpetrated with people that have a gun. We can't deny that. But at the end of the day, if government can't even figure out what it thinks about a border wall, how could it possibly, know what it thinks about gun ownership or our rights to protect ourselves? Because I guess what my issue here, Dan, is that they seem to waffle back and forth on what they think or what they believe. And that's why we keep playing this audio, and there's just this kind of, vox populi, this, the popular voice, as you point out, that is, hell-bent on blowing with whichever way the wind is going any particular day. And that, to me, is the birth child of anarchy, which can spell a lot of disaster in a legal or criminal sense in the future if we are not allowed the opportunity to defend our homes.
Well, absolutely. I mean, the difference between the liberal side of the argument and the conservative side is, on the conservative side, we know who the government works for. And so what they really try to do, I think what the Democrats in Congress really are trying to do is get a hold of the people who don't understand that, the people who don't understand who the government works for. Because you got to think about this. There are people in this country who believe that government should, control everything and make all the decisions. They believe in that top-down mentality. Those are the people that they want because they can get those votes. And I talk about the liberal and conservative, the differences. See, the liberals want a controlled society. They want that environment, that utopian government-controlled environment, because it feels safe to them. In other words, if everything is laid out for you, it can never be your fault when you screw up. So it's always somebody else's fault, and there's always blame to be placed on someone else. If you notice, that's kind of the way the left works things. It's always somebody else's fault, always blaming somebody else. And conservatives will think in an opposite way. Conservatives say, no, I'm free, so I get to do whatever the hell I want, and you get out of my way. If I screw up, I will pay the price. I'll fix the problem. I'll, do what's right. If and when I succeed, I get to own those rewards. So it's a different mentality. It's a difference between controlled environment and freedom. But I think what happens on the left, and this is why they're so easy to capture, is that they don't necessarily, the average person, people we see, Democrats that we see in the grocery store, in the bank, wherever, I don't think they want to control you as much as they like the idea of being controlled themselves. And in order for them to live in that controlled environment, that controlled society, they need you on board. Your guns get in the way of that because you have this crazy idea that you're a free person and that the government works for you. They don't like that because that makes them responsible for their own lives, and it puts them in a very scary position because there are different types of people in this world. There are people who are willing to take responsibility, and there are people who don't want to.
That's an absolutely wonderful point. And back to my original thought is, how can they live in this world of feigned safety and security and provision when we have these politicians that speak out of both sides of their mouths, as with the audio that we just played a few moments ago? Although we've got Dianne Feinstein and Schumer and Obama and Clinton on the audio, the cast of characters in that particular piece of audio are almost irrelevant. What is relevant is the fact that so many people on the left they are so uncommitted to what they believe in that they vacillate on almost every single issue. Where do you find safety and security in that, Dan?
It's in the fantasy part of it. See, and here's another thing. When we talk specifically, let me bring it back specifically to the gun conversation, and this will probably answer that question. When anti-gunners, and I've talked to them, and they said, I have never needed a gun in my life. Therefore, they believe nobody needs a gun. Nobody needs to carry a gun. That's just crazy talk, right? And the truth is, most people will go their entire life without ever being the victim of a violent attack. So at the end of their life, they can say, see, you gun owners, we told you so. You don't really need guns. I made it my entire life, never been attacked. So what is all this? So the point is that the majority of people will go that whole distance without ever being attacked. So they will have ways to justify not owning a gun. And that's the fantasy that they live in. Whereas those same people are hypocritical because when they get into their car, the first thing they do is they put their seatbelt on. But they've never been in a major car accident. So it's just a manipulation that people can do through the media, through politics, to get people on board to certain agendas. And it's really just getting them to subscribe to this fantasy, whatever the fantasy is, whether it's with guns or whatever.
That same argument can be made about health insurance and life insurance and car insurance and anything else that we use to protect ourselves. Why lock your door? The average American household will not be burglarized in its existence, in its lifetime. That argument can be made for almost everything. But I tell you what, it certainly makes me feel a lot safer, a lot more secure. But the reality of it is that the idea is you never know what is going to occur, what is going to happen. You and I both came to gun ownership and the desire to carry under very similar conditions.
Right.
Just, in situations that were completely unpredictable. In a matter of moments, we found ourselves in a potentially life-threatening situation that we were completely unprepared for. And in the case of your life, it might have even caused the death of your wife. And so, I just don't think enough people realize, and I can't describe, and I've tried to so many times, but I can't muster the emotion and the intensity to describe to people what I felt the moment I found myself in a situation where I thought I was about to die because I was not able to protect myself. And I swore. It was like Scarlett O'Hara holding up a clump of radishes, screaming, "I'll never go hungry again." And by God, I haven't. And now you have a government run by politicians that doesn't know what they even want to do in the macro sense of securing our border, but yet they'll secure the borders of their own residences, and they leave us out here to fend for ourselves while simultaneously telling us they're going to try to remove the apparatus that allows us to fend for ourselves because, when, cops arrive in minutes when seconds matter, and it can happen that quickly. I could have called 25 cops that day. I found myself in an alleyway with a gun pointed at me, and I would have been dead for 5 minutes by the time the police got there.
Oh, sure. The difference is in America, we do have people that think like you and me, and I always look at it like if I'm talking about something and something is of interest to me, I seem to be kind of the middle of thought. I take on an average type thought, logical average type thought among all Americans, and if I'm thinking about it and I'm recognizing something like this, like what we're talking about, the government making us unsafe with open borders and all this other stuff, if I'm thinking about it and you're thinking about it and we're talking about it, there are millions of other people doing the same thing, and they're saying, yeah, that's right. So the good news is more than probably 75% of the country thinks the way we do. Unfortunately, there's some of them who need to be at the popular table, and they'll gravitate toward that, and they'll do whatever they need to do to be accepted. But the majority of people, I think, understand what we're saying. That's why we have the Constitution. That's why I have the Bill of Rights, and that's why people are still fighting for it. And Democrats hate it because they can't gain control.
Before we take the one and only break of today's broadcast, Dan, tell the listeners a little bit more about your work, about the books that you have written, and why this is so unbelievably important. There's always, what's funny is, and speaking of individuality, I'm not one of these kind of guys that fears the federal government, that, thinks the federal government's going to come take all my waterways away from me or my ammunition, and they'll have to pry my gun from my dead cold hands. I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that wants to take care of his family and his friends and protect himself in any situation. And I think everybody has a different type of motivation for carrying a weapon if they choose to do so. Some, of course, do in part of the line of their work. Others are the type of people that, they're waiting for, the great future collapse of society. But yet other people are more in line with the way you and I think, which is a matter of just wanting to be safe and sound on the streets of America. So we all have our own different justifications. But before we can have our justifications, we must maintain our rights. And that's where Good Gun, Bad Guy comes in. So tell us a little bit more about the books.
Well, I did have a situation in my life like you talked about with my wife and I tell that story in the book. And what it basically did is it turned my thought process upside down because I was kind of anti-gun, believe it or not, before that. And when you have that awareness, that moment of clarity, and everything in your mind can change, and it's an amazing thing because that's how we transform. And it transformed me, and I realized in that moment that my first and foremost, job, my most important job is to protect myself and my family. So I started writing about it, and I wrote a blog article that got picked up by a bunch of websites and started to take off. And I kept writing, and somehow Good Gun, Bad Guy just kind of wrote itself, the first book. And as I started to look at the strategies and tactics from the anti-gun side of the conversation and how it keeps people in bondage in the anti-gun world, in the mindset of that anti-gun, the strategies and tactics are amazing, and we most often don't even recognize them. We don't even notice when it's happening in the media, politicians, and all this stuff. And I talk all about the strategies and how to be aware of them and what to do about it and how to understand what they're doing and how to counteract that stuff. So I talk all about that stuff. So there are some statistics in the books, but mostly it's about that anti-gun mindset and how we can better understand it so we can either help them or defeat them.
Well, they're great works. I love reading both of them. And people really do need to understand, as Kevin Reeve of One Point Tactical is fond of saying, we have to learn to become our own first responder, whether that's a fireman or a police officer or a paramedic or even a plumber for that matter. Really and truly, in situations such as this, knowing even the basic skills of survival, even if you choose not to carry a gun, what basic skills of survival are available to you? Because if we are not prepared, as you point out, to protect our families, something may very well, and hopefully it never will. Hopefully you'll never need your car insurance or at some point in time, life insurance will come into play. But there are things every single day we go out of our way to take care of our family and our friends and locking our doors and whatever else, or seatbelts or whatever else. Why would we not want to make the ultimate gesture towards the safety and security of our households? Dan, I got to take a real quick break. I trust you can hold on with us for another segment or two. Great. We're in a conversation with Dan Walsh. He is the author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. You're listening to the Situational Security edition of the Michael Hart Show right here on the Heart of America, brought to you in part by LibertyOneTech.com, as well as the Unknown America Project. Y'all stick around. We're coming right back.
Mexico does nothing to enforce its borders.
The bill before us will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences.
I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier.
I don't oppose building a fence where you need to do it, where the border is porous. I just don't have a problem with that.
Until the American people are convinced that we will stop future flows of illegal immigration, we will make no progress.
For the time being, enforce our borders.
Heart of America and the Michael Hart Show is brought to you in part by the Unknown America Project. Unknown America, myths and little-known oddities about the greatest nation on earth, explores many of the falsehoods and fallacies and revisions in American history that impact the beliefs and the thoughts of many people in this country today. So if you'd like to learn some of the most enduring myths that have been perpetrated on the American public for the last 100-plus years in this country, go check out the book at heartofamerica.net. That's heartofamerica.net. And pick up a copy of Unknown America. It comes out to you absolutely no shipping, be autographed, and we'll even send you a copy of the United States Constitution as our way of saying thanks. So support the Unknown America Project by simply going to theunknownamerica.com, and thank you for your support. The Land Report, the magazine for the American landowner, is a proud supporter of the Michael Hart Show. Currently, they're offering an exclusive subscription price for listeners of the Michael Hart Show. So click on the subscribe button on landreport.com and enter the code HARTSHOW at checkout and receive a 1-year discount on America's #1 land magazine. You'll get a full year of the Land Report, which normally goes for $59, for only $15. That's a 75% savings off the cover price. Again, that's promo code HARTSHOW at checkout of thelandreport.com, and make sure to check out the Land Report on Facebook if you love land. America is brought to you by the Unknown America Project and by Liberty One Tech. Get a free security checkup when you join Liberty One Tech's VIP service, Talk Text Plus, for only $20 a month. You can find out more by going to liberty1tech.com. That's liberty1tech.com. Go check them out right now. Support the people that make this program and all of Heart of America possible. We're having a conversation with Dan Wassi, author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. Now, Dan, we were talking about how wacky government can be and how misplaced so many. You heard the audio earlier or during the break of Barbara Boxer and Chuck Schumer and all of them. Basically, the people screaming about no border wall today, 5-6 years ago, were screaming, yeah, we want a wall, we want a wall. And so they just sit there and lie right to you, like, baby, I swear to God, she meant nothing to me, honey. I promise nothing happened. And, it's just so funny that people are so stupid. But there was a great audio that came out yesterday as well that was just, I thought was really kind of frames a big part of this conversation. And I don't know if you heard it or not, but it was actually CNN's Jim Acosta, who went down to McAllen, Texas, and that's where Donald Trump was going to be speaking about the border wall. And he's walking along the wall itself where he's making these claims. See, there's no emergency down here. There's no one rushing into America. And he literally has been excoriated online for proving the point that the wall works. Listen to this audio. This is good for a laugh because Jim Acosta proves exactly what's wrong with the gun narrative and the security narrative in this country, that right before their very eyes, they cannot see reality.
And here are some of the steel slats that the president's been talking about right here. As you can see, yes, you can see through these slats to the other side of the U.S.-Mexico border. But as we're walking along here, we're not seeing any kind of imminent danger. There are no migrants trying to rush toward this fence here in the McAllen, Texas area. As a matter of fact, there are some other businesses behind me along this highway. There's a gas station, Burger King, and so on. But no sign of the national emergency that the president has been talking about. As a matter of fact, it's pretty tranquil down here.
There's no emergency because they built the fence. And and I mean, you gotta see the audio. And I really don't want to go political when we're talking about people's individual security, but they've got to understand if we don't support our rights to protect ourselves, this is the kind of idiocracy that permeates the day. And so here we have a fence that's obviously working. And the media is telling us that it's not needed because there's no threat. In a similar fashion, like in Kennesaw, Georgia, for example, where every resident of that city by law must carry a firearm or have a firearm in their home, they average a murder every 10 to 15 years because nobody's going to break into these houses knowing these people are armed. So in the presence of resistance, security seems to blossom. Why can't they get that?
I don't know. It was actually embarrassing to watch him stand there at the wall and say and explain to America. Basically, he explained how border walls keep America safe. And I'm watching and I'm going, does he even realize what he's saying? Because he's so caught up in the politics of it all and the narrative and the propaganda. He thinks he's doing something good for his team, and he's actually proving the fact that walls keep us safe. Of course there's nobody there because of the wall. And what did he expect? He wanted to see people, with their faces pressed up against the fence trying to get through?
Did you ever see the movie with Will Smith, I Am Legend?
Oh, you'll have to remind me what it was about because I think I did see it.
He's a doctor in New York City, and there's a cancer virus or something that goes around that kills everybody, or the ones that survive, they turn into these like droid type of people, and they're almost like a Walking Dead kind of a thing. If you haven't seen the movie, there's a scene in the movie where he is trying to capture one of these affected infected people so he can experiment on a vaccine that will bring them back to sanity and help cure them of this disease. But there's a scene in the movie where all these people are rushing at him, just mindlessly trying to attack him and kill him, despite the fact he's a doctor which is trying to save them. And there was one in particular, he's behind a glass barrier where this guy just keeps running headlong into this piece of bulletproof glass to the point where eventually, they get through and everybody dies. But the point is that's kind of the scene I think that Jim Acosta thought he was going to see, was these bunch of mindless, brainless immigrants rushing towards a wall that they couldn't permeate. And so there is absolutely, as you point out, this delusion of from the left in particular, or, there's anti-gun people on the right. I'm sure there must have to be. But this delusion of people that are so anti-security that either this didn't work or it was not necessary. And the reason I keep bringing this back up is, to me, the border security argument is the macro version of the concealed carry argument. It's a matter of, A, the problem doesn't exist, or B, we've got the better solution than what you think.
Yeah, that makes sense. And to think that people, the idea that people watching Jim Acosta, if there was anyone watching him and saw it in a way that promoted no border, I don't understand what would be going on in their head, because you couldn't help looking at that and saying, well, yeah. Any logical thinking person would say, well, yeah, that makes sense. There's nobody there because, there's a wall there. Same thing with the gun argument. We know that guns, we see politicians with armed security detail. We see people with guns. We see cops with guns. The average person knows guns are for the purpose of saving lives and defending yourself. The way that people, their minds can get so twisted to think the opposite of what they're seeing is really an interesting thing. It's a really interesting part of the conversation that I think we need some psychologists involved here today to help us. But from what I see is that you can manipulate the thought process of people to go against logic and what they actually see with their own eyes, and even to get them to go against their own beliefs, their own internal core values and core beliefs, if you can implement other things that are stronger. And the strongest way to do that, to manipulate the thought process of people, is to use fear and hate. And I talk about it all the time, but they're the strongest human emotion. So if you can get people to hate Trump and his supporters for wanting to put up a wall, you'll get them on your side, even if Acosta goes to the border and shows you how a wall helps. Did that make sense?
Yeah, it did, and it's so funny because we're sitting here talking about our personal security, and the theme of today's broadcast is to discuss the government's plan to restrict our rights and our ability to protect our family and our home. And so they are so brainwashed in their own fantasies that they themselves cannot even see when they are proving their own points incorrect. And that to me is highly dangerous. So why would we be even remotely surprised to learn that the federal government is, in some cases state governments, continuing to attempt to strip us of the rights that they think that we don't deserve to have? So with that said, and knowing that you are on the front lines of the gun argument and the debate alongside Jan Morgan and so many others, can you give us a little bit of an idea here, because I know that there's been some laws that I'm not up to speed on that have been implemented as of January 1, and I'm not asking you to go state by state with laws. We don't have time for that. But what are some of the things, what is some of the verbal traffic that you are hearing out in your travels about plans by the Fed for 2019 as it relates to gun legislation? Anything new on the horizon that's looming?
Well, I think probably the most important thing is, you may have heard people talking about red flag laws. or they call them extreme protection laws or whatever. They have different, less violent names for them. But they're really red flag laws. And what they do is they give police departments the authority to confiscate guns from private citizens without due process. And I'll give you a couple quick examples, and then I'll tell you about the national part of it. These are state laws. Maryland has one in place, and a guy named Gary Willis got killed because of it. Cops showed up at his door because his daughter or his sister or somebody said that he was a risk or he could be dangerous and he owns guns. So cops show up at this guy's door, like a 60-year-old guy, 5 o'clock in the morning, and he goes to the door with his gun. I mean, they're banging on the door. What would you do? I'd have my gun on me. And a scuffle happened, and he ends up getting killed because somebody accused him. So red flag laws give authority to cops to take your guns without due process, and then you have to go to court and defend yourself and earn your rights back and prove your innocence. So it's a terrible thing. It violates due process and it violates our rights. That's Maryland. New York and many other states, I think there's now 13 or 14 states now that have these red flag laws in place. They're all a little bit different, but they all basically say the same thing. We can take your guns, and then you have to prove yourself innocent. So now there's a bill called H.R. 5717 in Congress, and basically what this bill is trying to do is trying to encourage states to get on board with these red flag laws. And the way they do it is they're offering grants to states who get on board with these gun confiscations or these red flag laws. And one way that they do it is there's one statement in the H.R. 5717 bill. It says, let me see if I can find that, to authorize Attorney General to make grants to states that have in place laws that authorize the seizure of firearms from dangerous individuals and other purposes. Now, dangerous individuals is all subjective. You can be accused, Michael Hart, you can be accused by someone, anyone, your neighbor, that, you're a danger to society, calls the cops and they come to your house and take your guns. So it's a very scary thing. It's called H.R. 5717. Everyone needs to get educated on it and fight it. We can't have that. We got to overturn them at the state level. Now we have to deal with it possibly going to on a federal level. It's scary. So that's the big thing that I'm concerned with right now.
So do you think that there's a possibility, because it sounds like it to me, that some of the policies and the laws that are being placed on the books is creating a dangerous environment between citizens and law enforcement? Because, we're still grappling with that mall shooting incident in Birmingham, Alabama, and there have been, I think, 2, if not 3 police officers murdered this week alone in the United States. And there seems to be this trend of friction that is developing between, the rank and file Americans and law enforcement in general. Now, I don't mean to imply that there's all of a sudden this, this opposition that's widespread. But it does seem like that every time the government, whether it's state or federal, gets in the middle of this debate, that there seems to be an increase in tensions and an increase in violent responses and an increase in these stories. Now, I don't know if that's just my imagination or not, but at the end of the day, the louder it seems the politicians get about gun control and gun rights, the more, just contemptuous society seems to be in many parts of the country. Is that just my imagination?
No, you're right. And let me get to that police versus citizens part of what you mentioned there. First of all, I did a video on this, and people can search it on YouTube. It's called Red Flag Laws Kill. Red Flag Laws Kill. If they want to, and I explain the Maryland incident and how these work. Now, to get to that police and citizens, they are trying to use the police departments to strong-arm citizens. The good news is that many police departments are not complying with some of this stuff. which is why I go back to the HR 5717, which is a federal at the federal level, where they're trying to encourage. You see, when the police departments won't get on board to strong-arm citizens, they come out with HR 5717, which tells them to authorize their attorney general to make grants, to authorize the attorney general to make grants to states that have in place laws that authorize the seizure of firearms from dangerous individuals and for other purposes. So what they're doing is, because they know that some of these police departments will not conform to this, and they're offering grants now to get them to. This is how scary that can be.
That is amazing to me. That is truly amazing to me. And every single day that we see a greater and greater and greater encroachment, and what's kind of interesting, Dan, is how many times we have heard over the years people making the argument that I carry a gun because I fear government. Aren't these stories, aren't these programs and policies kind of pulling at Jim Acosta and proving the very point that government can, in fact, be problematic to the safety and security of her citizens? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you go
ahead.
Okay. You go, because I lost my spot anyway.
No. I was just going to say that it seems like they proved the very thing that they're concerned about, and it's just every single day. It's just like the government seems to be, in some sense or another, ostracizing itself from the very people that it's supposed to be serving. I mean, it even goes back to the shutdown. Now, all of a sudden, the hell with people not getting paid paychecks today. We got to stand up to Donald Trump for reasons we're not quite sure about. And we know it's only $5 billion, but you're not getting that. You're not getting that wall. You can't have that. Despite what the motivation is, I'm convinced that if Trump said, "Okay, I don't want a wall after all," that we'd have a wall tomorrow. And and they do this to the detriment of the protections of individual Americans. And I just don't think a lot of people see. I mean, we can talk about whether or not they're coming to take our guns away, ha ha ho ho. But at the end of the day, I don't think enough Americans realize that it might not be happening on a national level yet. But as you point out, it's certainly happening at the state level.
Yeah, well, they forgot who they work for. And it's pretty easy when power gets that off balance. It's easy for those, if they're not ethical, not moral, to forget who they work for. And unfortunately, the liberal progressive minds, they like it. But the conservative minds hate it. So this is why, and if you go back to that gun conversation, if they were really honest and they told you that 2.5 million times per year in America lives are saved because of guns, if they told you that truth, you wouldn't believe another word. You wouldn't believe another word they said. Even the Democrats would start to go along if they told you the truth. But they don't want you to know that 2.5 million lives are saved, where 2,500 are taken in homicides with the use of a gun. 2,500 homicides, which we don't want, but it happens by gun, and 2.5 million lives are saved by gun. So now, what's going to happen if you take those, and you restrict more law-abiding gun owners and you give more sanctuary to criminals? You're going to start to see an imbalance. You're going to start to see that scale move. You're going to start to see more homicides and less people being able to defend themselves. So 2,500 homicides by gun, 2.5 million lives saved by gun. They don't want you to know that.
Well, they have demonstrated time and time and time again that keeping people in their place is preferable to allowing people a sense of individuality and protection and rights. Because, at the end of the day, I think, and the reason I want to have you on with us today is the fact that, to me, the proof of that is with the whole border wall debate, because we're talking, for all intent and purposes, an economic drop in the bucket, and it has become all political. And if they can politicize the safety and security of an entire nation, why would we think for one moment that they do not politicize the individual safety? And then you start adding things in, not to go all political on it, but you start adding things in like abortion, the lack of respect for the unborn and life in general. It is so amazing how fatalistic the Democrats seem to be. That they don't honor and cherish life. They don't protect gender. They don't protect the unborn. They don't protect the borders. They won't allow us to protect our own households, our families, and our churches and synagogues. They seem to be all about some kind of, quasi paternalistic state that can't possibly exist for the purpose of creating the illusion that they have got this and that everything is taken care of, and nothing can be further from the truth. And every single day, they are passing policies and laws that further seek and strive to create that illusion that is completely unattainable. And I just hope that as people listen to this program and they talk about it and they share it and they read your book, that they will see it for what it is. Because to me, the abortion thing, the gun thing, the border wall, safety and security, it's all part of the same package of a distrust of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, as hokey as that might sound. Dan?
Well, when you watch all the stuff going on with the border, all the media, even the, with the Jim Acosta stuff, people are starting to see it. And I think the wheels are starting to fall off their, what do they say, apple cart? Their wheels are starting, in their case, their Prius. The wheels are starting to fall off their Prius. And people, even on the Democrat side, are starting to recognize the insanity that they're trying to push on people with respect to this notion that we don't need borders.
Right. Well, again, we don't need borders unless they're their borders. We don't need walls unless they're their walls, and we don't need guns unless it's their guns. And I'm just amazed by all of that, and it's very, very, very sad. And yet again, it seems like middle America, and I don't mean the middle geographical area, I mean the middle class, seems to pay the price of the ignorance of the political elite, which is why I've said for many years, people don't understand there's a lower class, a middle class, an upper class, and a political class, and they do, as you point out, sit at the popular table and decide who sits there with them. Dan, unfortunately, out of time. Tell the listeners how they can find more out about Dan and your books.
Oh, well, they can go to goodgunbadguy.net or goodgunbadguy.com, or can search Good Gun Bad Guy on Amazon.
Excellent. Very good stuff. Dan, thank you so much for hanging out with us for the entire hour. We will definitely do it again very, very, very soon.
Thanks, pal. Can't wait.
Absolutely. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Bye-bye. All right, guys, that was Dan Wast, author of Good Gun, Bad Guy. That's it for us. Please share this program. Spread the word all across America to ever you can. We got to deal with these red flag laws now and all the wackiness that is coming out of Washington, D.C. If you like what we're doing here at the Heart of America and the Unknown America Project, please consider supporting us by going to the Patreon link, which is either on michaelhartshow.com or heartofamerica.net. That's heartofamerica.net. We do still have and are continuing to honor the deal for the book, Unknown America. It will come out to you autographed, a copy of the Constitution to irritate your liberal friends, and it will come to you with no shipping and handling. Just go to The Unknown America, theunknownamerica.com, The Unknown America. There's several different websites for you here, so theunknownamerica.com. Please spread this audio around. If you listen to us on iTunes or Spotify or Apple Play or Google Play or all the other plays that are out there, maybe listen to us on the Blog Talk platform. If you click on the Blog Talk Radio and seek out Heart of America, you can even follow the program so you get notifications when we are doing live broadcasts just like this. Got a very packed week coming up, and excited to be able to share that with you as well. But please help us share what is going on with this program, support this program, because really and truly, it is entirely up to us to make absolutely certain that we educate people to what's really going on in this country. And as we close out this edition of Situational Security, remember that they don't even know, those people in Washington, D.C., what they want for your security. And I'm going to play this audio every single chance that I get. And again, this is Chuck Schumer, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, Dianne Feinstein, and Barbara Boxer. They do not care about the safety and security of this nation. They don't know what they want. They were very supportive years ago of borders until Donald Trump suggested it. All they want is to maintain their power, and the only way they can maintain power or regain power, as they did in the midterms, is to be resistant to anything that comes out on the other side, and here's proof of that.
Mexico does nothing to enforce its borders.
The bill before us will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences.
I voted numerous times when I was a senator to spend money to build a barrier.
I don't oppose building a fence where you need to do it, where the border is porous. I just don't have a problem with that.
Until the American people are convinced that we will stop future flows of illegal immigration, we will make no progress.
For the time being, enforce our borders.
That's it for us. You've been listening to Heart of America presents Situational Security. This is Michael Hart. Y'all have a great day, rest of your day, and we'll be back with you very soon.